Hello everybody, welcome back to the stream. Good to see you all again. So today I'm going to be fixing some bugs. There's some weird stuff happening. I'm kind of in the process of reworking how some of the technical stuff works. But I don't know how much of that we're going to get into. There's a very specific issue that I'm trying to fix today. And I think I have an idea for it, but I basically just need to figure it out. So we're going to be figuring that out together, and I'll be explaining what the issue is and all that good stuff. So yeah, before I get into it, I'm just making sure everything's all set up for me. Before I get into it, I want to remind everyone that Alchemortis is available for wishlisting. The Steam page is currently being updated. We've got an updated description, updated capsule art. The screenshots are going to be updated next, and then the trailer. So you can check out the Steam page if you want to find out more about the game or wishlist it. You can also support the game on Patreon. Your support here is very much appreciated. I am self-funded, so every little bit helps, but you get a couple of nice perks for subscribing for at least 1 month. At the sponsor tier here, I will send you an Alchemortis Steam key when the game launches, if you subscribe at this tier for at least 1 month, and your name will be listed in the in-game Alchemortis credits. So if that sounds interesting, please consider doing that. And also, I have my Udemy courses, which will teach you how to build complete games in the Godot engine. Oops, I just clicked too many times. That's all right. So yeah, check out the links in the description below. Those are all the ways you can support me. You can also join the Discord. That's totally free to do. Subscribe to the channel, follow on Twitch, all that good stuff. Hello, Simon William Taylor. Welcome back. Good to see you. Am I experiencing the Mandela effect? Is get viewport rect not working? Get viewport rect. I don't know. It seems to be on a canvas item. So I do not think that we are in a Mandela effect situation here, but I don't know. I've never really used that method, so I don't know. Okay, so let me explain what the bug is here. So I just recently redid how the abilities that are projected from artifacts work. So basically the problem was that the way an artifact works, artifacts that modify things or change abilities or whatever, like the draft here. So this draft of coagulation, it adds a heal ability to basically every item in the game. And there was initially just getting the list of abilities that needed to be placed on a card from an artifact. That was initially just one method called base composed abilities that accepted an artifact context and a base card. And then what it would do is it would run filters. So basically, every single card in the game fetches the abilities that should be added to it from the artifact manager directly. Now you can make an argument that maybe that's not the best way to do it, and I may change that. But basically, every time I'm going to process a card, I ask the artifacts, hey, what abilities would you like to add to this card during this execution? And then the artifacts are the ones that are responsible for doing the filtering. So I could keep all of the artifact logic, all of the artifact behavior isolated to the artifact class. And then the cards become just very generic, like give me the abilities I'm supposed to have, right? But the problem was, of course, with the translations. Because there was a layer of filtering getting in the way of actually retrieving the abilities, I was not able to reliably get all of the abilities that are managed by artifacts so that I could grab their text and translate them. That was especially a problem with this draft here. So this healing ability was actually never being added to the translation file. Number one, because I wasn't even fetching the abilities from the artifacts to begin with. But number two, we've got this filter here. So basically, I would have had to create a card that has the is owned by player flag and then pass that in. I basically have to pass in a configuration that would match all the filters so I could get all of the abilities back. So anyway, I refactored the system a little bit. And now I have these ability filters. So this ability filters list exists on the base artifact. I guess this can be read-only. And we can make this a primary constructor. So this is a list. It's a tuple list. And the tuple values are an ability filter, which is just a function that takes an artifact context in a base card and returns a Boolean. And then we have a function that returns the list of abilities that should be returned when that filter passes. And so now I can add an arbitrary number of ability filters. And then when I go to add the abilities, I call get filter composed abilities. This will iterate over all of the filters. And if the filter passes, it will add the abilities returned by that ability func, which is the second value in the tuple. So the benefit of doing it this way is that if I ever need to just get all of the possible abilities from an artifact, I can do get unfiltered composed abilities, and what this does is this just skips the filter and just grabs the abilities directly. So this is for the translation purposes. So this is used in the translation generator, and I had to rework this as well, but we won't get into that. So anyway, that's what's happening there. The reason that this needs to be an ability filter list is because I do have one artifact which actually returns different abilities depending on the filter. So this one increases the turn cooldown of non-minion items and reduces the turn cooldown of minion items. So the reason why I needed to make it a list of filters with ability functions is so that I could specify narrow filters for each set of abilities that I'd want to return out, right? So in this case, we've got a filter minion and a get cooldown reduction ability, and then filter non-minion, get cooldown increase ability. But again, because of the translation process is just skipping the filters and grabbing all of the abilities, it's just basically concatenating that into one list. It's calling both of these methods and then concatenating that all into a big list. All right, anyway. Now, the problem at hand here is a slightly different problem, but was an artifact of this, is that I no longer have any information about the card when I'm returning the abilities. So in this case, this draft ability, it has create simple heal. And this creates a new composed ability that heals based on the number of alchemies that have happened. But I don't have any card data here. Like this get abilities doesn't accept any arguments. So I just need to return an entirely self-contained ability. The idea here is that I don't really want to affect I don't want to affect how the ability works based on filters. Like abilities should be standalone pieces of functionality that can be freely passed between cards without anything breaking. The problem is that, well, I'll get into the problem in just a second, but let's say hello to everyone who has joined. Hello, Ninja Link, welcome. Hello, Emerson, welcome back. Hello, Zeralicious. What exactly is VS Code for? I might try it out if it does any better than the built-in editor. Yeah, I mean, VS Code is just a dedicated IDE, a code editor. So it's got a lot of features that the built-in Godot editor doesn't have, but yeah, you should give it a shot. I like it. Being able to grab unfiltered full lists has proven to be really important in my past projects. Yeah, that is very important. Because the unfiltered full list is essentially the set of all possibilities, right? It's essentially what are, like in my case, what are all of the possible abilities that could be added to cards by the artifact, and being able to bypass the filter stage and not have to worry about constructing the correct state to pass the filters is just like a necessity, right? So yeah, I think that's a very valuable thing to do in a lot of cases. From my experience as a software engineer, VS Code is a pretty great code editor, which you can add lots of useful extensions. Yeah, I agree. Hello, unbanned Vlada, welcome, good morning. Can I ask why you're using C# instead of GDScript? Hello, not Fenir. No, that question is off limits and I'm going to ban you now, actually. Hello, Tan Talking. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, not Fenir. I'm using C# because I just find it easier to build more complex games in C#. There's a lot of things with C# like interfaces, abstract classes, so on and so forth, that just make it an easier and more structured experience to write complex game systems. I mean, you can make the kind of game like I'm making, Alchemortis, in GDScript, but I think that lacking a lot of the features, especially interfaces, would make it a lot harder and more indirect than doing it in C#. So, but it's a personal preference thing. GDScript is a very capable language, and so yeah, you can use whatever you like. Did you making a game? I am making a game. I've made games in the past, and I'm making games right now, and I'll make games in the future probably. So anyway, let's talk about the issue at hand here. So this creates simple heal. So a new reference, a new ability is created every time get abilities is called. So this returns a new array with a new composed ability reference. Now, the reason why I'm doing that is basically because this ability is going to be sent to essentially all cards that the player owns. And I don't think it's a very smart idea to have the same ability reference existing individually on each card. I think that's a recipe for getting some weird side effects. And also, I just don't think that the description won't work, because what essentially happens is this inner ability is a non-combat ability, so this gets updated basically whenever the board state changes. And what this does is this fetches the alchemization count with a card data provider, and that gets captured here, and then that's used in a generic value provider to determine how large the heal needs to be. So if the same ability reference is shared between cards, it's basically going to be whatever card executed last is going to be the one that is providing this captured alchemization count, which is not good because we want it to be a unique value. Not necessarily unique, but we want that value to be particular to that card instance. However, there are certain situations in my base card. This is such a freaking... This is a complex system. I don't think it's possible to make it any less complex, though. So there's this rebuild ability tree. The ability tree is a class. It's exactly what it sounds like. It constructs a tree of all the abilities, because my ability system is basically just a tree structure where I can do, I can do searches down the branches of the tree and look for certain types of abilities, and then when I go to execute, I flatten everything, and I don't know what it's technically called. I don't think it's exactly depth first, but basically everything gets flattened into just a linear array, and then the abilities are executed one by one in order. But the ability tree makes it very easy to, prune certain branches of the tree or only go down certain branches of the tree if I'm looking for something in particular. However, every time this ability tree gets rebuilt, it calls get all composed abilities, it calls get filtered composed abilities on the artifact, and it creates a brand new reference of this heal ability here. And the problem with that is that not all rebuild ability tree calls are paired with an update of the non-combat abilities. So that means that I could rebuild the tree without actually triggering an update execution of like this ability here. And so that's a problem. And I don't think the solution is to trigger that rebuild, because this rebuild ability tree is actually called when a projected ability gets added to the card. So add projected composed abilities. This will happen actually during the combat execution. A card will project an ability onto another card, and then the ability tree will be rebuilt. And this is also called, I think, it should be called when the yeah, it's called also when the projected composed abilities gets cleared. So basically this rebuild ability tree is creating new draft heal abilities every time it gets called. So the fundamental problem here is that rebuild ability tree does not necessarily contain stable references. So when I call rebuild, ideally what would happen is only the stuff that has changed would be updated instead of everything that has remained unchanged. And that's true in the vast majority of cases. So if I look at something like the Scarecrow, so this abilities list in here, that is what is being used when I go to rebuild the ability tree. So it takes this composed ability and then it builds out the branches in accordance with these abilities here. But these are stable references, right? This composed ability is just being added directly to the card as part of the composed abilities array. So when I call rebuild ability tree, this reference is the same. The only problem really exists in artifact if I happen to be duplicating or creating a new reference at the artifact level that gets passed down to the card. So anyway, the problem here is that I need a stable reference. I need artifacts to somehow maintain stable references to the abilities that they're assigning to cards. And I think the most straightforward way of doing that is to cache it in some way and to invalidate that cache during the appropriate times. Because there's not really, yeah, I mean, I think that would have to be the way to do it. So my plan for today was to create that cache system because I really don't think there's another way around that. The other option is to, let's see. So another option would be to pass that base card information back in here, and then we can capture the alchemization count here. And then it doesn't matter that this reference is changing if we just use this value inside of the ability. But I don't really like that. I don't think the whole idea behind the ability system is that it should be entirely self-contained. That if I just like take this block of code, I could just run that and create this ability in whatever situation I want without having to know which card it's going to end on or end up on, which is why there's this card data provider. This actually provides data about the specific card that this ability is on. So ideally, I don't want the ability to know directly which card it's on. It should be able to fetch the data about what card it's on through the ability system. So anyway, hello Fire, do you usually look into other projects' code? Have you had the opportunity to look into Slay the Spire 2? Their code looks really well done. Hello Gabriel Augusto. I have not, no, I haven't looked at that, but I've heard good things about it. Any game I can play? Yeah, if you go to my Steam page, Alchemortar Steam page, it's linked below. You can click on Firebelly developer link. You can see all the games that I've put on Steam. I also have my itch.io page, firebelly.itch.io, which contains a bunch of free games, little jam games you can play. I find GDScript having to export a lot of variables just so annoying to me, and I like having to type everything to organize functionality. Yeah, I like that as well. Look up Firebelly on Steam. Listen on the Devas game he has published. There are a few, yeah. Some of them are not super good. I think Swordslinger is an interesting game, and then Gunforge is a pretty decent game as well. Plan on switching to C# after finishing this one little project I have. Very nice. Hello, Snuff Bill. Thank you for the IDR 10,000. Very much appreciated. Thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. With the message, yummers. Always good to see you, Snuff Bill. Welcome back. GG Dono. Hello, Ed Zillion. Where can I look at this latest Fire 2 code? I don't know. I don't know. Hello, Arion. Welcome. Good morning. Clickertail, welcome back. Good to see you. All right, well, let's start thinking about the cache system then. I think I want to rework how the ability tree... I was trying to do... There was another interesting thing I was trying to do last night, but I don't think it's going to work. So when I update... So board state contingent abilities are abilities that depend on the board state. So, you know, I have items in the game where it's like, if there are at least 3 adjacent alchemical cards, project paralysis immunity to adjacent allied cards, right? So I need to be able to detect when the board state changes so I can update that state and say, okay, are there 3 alchemical cards? If so, apply those updates. So right now that update is applied in a very chunked manner, like every card is iterated over and it does this phase, and then every card does this phase, and then every card does this phase, because there's an order of operations that needs to be maintained here. But I was playing around last night with a more of like a convergence approach, which is just a more straightforward like application of all the state changes to the card, and then capture a snapshot of the state. Well, you capture a snapshot of the state before you do all the state transformations, and then you look at the snapshot after the transformations have been applied, and you basically just do a comparison and you say, did the state that we started with differ from the state that we ended with? If so, run the loop again. And you keep running that loop until it converges, which means that the state is no longer changing. That doesn't fundamentally fix the problem that I have here, though. So I actually don't know if I'm going to continue with that, because it's like, you know, it doesn't actually fix anything. But there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Anyway, how can we do the cache here? So I think it would be in here, get filtered composed abilities. Let's just see if this works first. I'm going to have to deal with cache invalidation when the card is removed, but... So you've got our filtered ability cache. If we don't pass the filter, then what we'll do is we'll do filter ability cache dot try remove. Can I just do remove? This won't throw an exception. This won't throw an exception if the key doesn't exist, right? I think it returns a bool, which means that it will turn true or false based on whether it succeeded in the remove. So we remove, if the filter fails, we'll remove the ability from the cache. Otherwise, we will do this. We will do filtered ability cache dot try get value, base card out var cached abilities, and then what we'll do here is we'll do cached abilities. Well, let's see. if cached abilities is equal to null, then we will return, we'll say cached abilities is equal to that. We can do that. So I think that's right? So we'll clear the cache if the filter misses, if the filter fails. Otherwise, we will try to get the existing cached abilities. If those do not exist because they have not been cached yet, we'll call the ability func, and then we'll add the filtered ability cache there. And that should stabilize it for that card. Okay. All right, so we got this create simple heal now, so let me do this. We're going to try this out. Hopefully this works. Never tried decompiling a code base. Well, not in years. I thought the symbols would be all alphanumeric strings, which makes it unreadable. Well, technically, any code base is alphanumeric strings, right? No, but I get what you're saying. You mind explaining how blank on triggers work? These ones? These are virtual methods. So in I guess traditional object-oriented languages like C#, inheritance is a pretty big deal. So you've got a couple of options. You can declare a concrete implementation of a method, which is like this: get unfiltered composed abilities. That is going to be present basically in every single inherited class. So any class that inherits base artifact. And then you've got this virtual, which basically means that this is an overridable method, but you can provide a default implementation for the virtual method. So a virtual method does not need to be overridden, but this method is present on anything that inherits base artifact. So if I don't override on combat started in an inherited class, it just does nothing. It can still call the method still exists, but it does nothing. The other option is I could do public abstract bool test. And an abstract class basically means that you are required to override it. So it can't have a default implementation. It has to be overridden in the inherited class. Or in the inheriting class, I should say. So yeah, so this is basically just saying the default on triggers here are no ops, and it's up to the base artifact, anything that extends base artifact, it's up to that to override this method if it needs that functionality, basically. I decompiled Silksong last month. I'm learning from it from my Metroidvania project. Awesome. Suppose I should have done this before I tried to make a Balatro clone. The grid video on Patreon was great, super helpful for my project. Awesome. I'm glad you liked it, the malicious rabbit. Glad you liked it. I'm going to do more videos like that, so Patreon exclusive content. Love is more of a framework than an engine. Does it make it easier to mod the game after? For Alchemortis, I don't know. I'm assuming Alchemortis will be relatively easy to mod. I mean, if people are decompiling Slay the Spire and using that for modding, then I don't see why the same wouldn't be true of Alchemortis. Can have a default state that if you don't need it, that just exists there. Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's go to the game here. So we've got drafted coagulation, heal 1, and if I do this, and I do that, so this should be heal 2 now. Perfect. So these are both heal 2. Let's do this now. Let me just check this. Add items, skeleton, warrior. Let's try this now. Add artifact hands. If your board contains only weapon items, all allied weapon items gain. Okay, so let's check the cache invalidations stuff. We'll add a scythe. If I put this here, I've got Hands of the Fallen Echo, and then I've got the 0.5x critical chance multiplier and 20% critical chance. I think that's correct. Yeah. So if I add a non-weapon item here, that should disappear. Yeah. So you'll see it's 30% and then 2.5x at the top there. And then there's an ability that says Hands of the Fallen. But if I add a non-weapon item to the board, all of those bonuses go away. So that's good. So we're caching those abilities now. Now the problem is this filtered ability cache needs to be cleared when the card gets destroyed. So there's a couple of ways I can do this. I could try to hook into the base card destroying event here. The problem is this only gets called if I actually call destroy on this. I'm trying to think if there's a case where is there a case where I could have a base card reference that is just garbage collected and is never called, like I never call destroy on it explicitly? I think that's probably possible. The other thing is I probably don't actually need to worry about it that much, because even if there are stale references in the filtered ability cache, to cards that no longer exist. Number one, that's not going to negatively affect anything because it's not like I'm iterating over the keys in the dictionary. And number two, let's say that there is like a, you know, I have 24 entries in an artifact of cached abilities, but that base card no longer exists for whatever reason. That dictionary is going to be freed after the run anyway. So it's like, even if there are like stale values that will never be referenced again, that's only going to last as long as the run exists, or until you close the game, because you could save mid-game, close it, reopen it. That cache will get rebuilt, and it won't contain the stale references, obviously. So I don't think it's probably not that important to be like super particular about making sure that anytime a card is no longer used, it removes it from the cache. So I think I'll just take the basic approach. Hold on a second. I actually don't know how to see. I don't know how to know if oh, you can unsubscribe from an event in C# even if the handler was never added. It will simply fail silently. I hope you're not lying to me. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll do base card dot destroying minus equals on card destroying. Well, shoot, that's not going to work, is it? Because this actually doesn't pass along the reference. What do I do here? Do I want to add an argument to this destroying event? More than default state is a default behavior, right? Yeah. You make the art animations? Yes. Everything you see visually on the screen was made by me. All the animations, all the art. Pixel art done by hand. Yep. Slay the Spire devs even made a card creator inside Godot, so it's really easy to mod it. Never tried though. Awesome. Do you have to hand make an in-game console yourself? Yes, I made that myself, yeah. I decompiled it exclusively to learn how they structured the Godot project, yeah. Will there be a new round of playtests like this month? Maybe, we'll see. Will there be cards that reference any removed cards, like scale based on how many object cards removed from this combat? That's not how the combat works. It's an auto battler. So, like, the board state doesn't change during combat. So there's no, there won't be anything that scales like that because that's not how the game works. Hello, David Martinez, Leon Rune, welcome. Good afternoon to you as well. What am I going to do about this one? Oops. Yeah, I don't know what to do about this one. All right, I guess I will just add an argument here. That'll probably be the easiest thing to do. Do I need a reference to the base card still? Yeah. Okay. All right. So then there should just be a discard there. Okay. We're going to remove the card from the cache. So that should handle the majority of cases. Like I said, if there's like stale instances or whatever, that's fine. Oh, I need to subscribe to this. Is it safe to just do this? Base card not destroying. So if we don't pass the filter, we're going to unsubscribe. Otherwise, if we pass the filter, we're only going to do this if the cached abilities is null. So that means that this is not going to, if the filter passes repeatedly, it's only the first time when there are no cached abilities that it's going to subscribe. And then the only time that cache would be cleared is when the filter doesn't pass. So I think that's fine. I'll just put a little log in here just to be sure. Okay, let's see. Just joined your game looks sorry. Hey, just joined. Your game looks awesome, dude. Thank you, Tiro for real. Welcome to the stream. I appreciate that. Kind of in the midst of doing some technical stuff right now, but I think it's working. You mentioned exhaust. Does that resolve after combat? Yeah. Yeah, exhaust only happens during combat. Okay, so we've got heal 1 on the draft of coagulation. Let's see if I do this. Card destroying or removing from cache. Okay, so that means that this draft of coagulation no longer has a cache entry for that card we just destroyed. Same deal there. Awesome. Cool. What is it that you're attempting with the card destroying in cache? I went through a whole explanation of this at the beginning of the stream, but basically the problem in a nutshell is that new ability references were being created every time there was an update in certain situations, and that was causing the internal state of some abilities to be wrong, particularly with this draft artifact. So yeah, that's basically what was going on there. Now I kind of want to do just make sure all of these are not sending abilities the same ability reference to every item. Might as well fix these while I'm here too. You create an exclusive rendering server for the cards instead of using the default renderer. I'm still using the default renderer. I'm just bypassing the node system and using the rendering server directly for the rendering of my cards. Coming from a programming background in which designs are handled by a dedicated designer, I find the design elements of the game intimidating. How did you get confident in pixel art? Basically just lots of practice. You know, I was not a good pixel artist when I started. As a matter of fact, you can go back in the history of my YouTube channel and you can see what some of my early devlogs look like, as well as like what, you know, early versions of Gunforged look like. You know, it might be fun to just pull that up right now. Let me see. Let's see if I can go way, way back in the history. There we go. So this was an early version of Gunforged, and you can see that the pixel art is not that great. Some of the effects are kind of nice, but yeah, just not that good looking overall. Kind of weird, kind of amateurish. But that's the, you know, that's the thing. It's like you got to start somewhere, you know. So just trying to get practice, trying to understand how to do things, watching a lot of pixel art tutorials, watching a lot of pixel art critiques, studying how other people do pixel art, and just practicing a lot is basically what I had to do. And so this was 5 years ago. So it, you know, 5 years ago to this point, it's a long time, right? But I think it just, you know, it's just one of those things where it just takes a lot of time. You have to be ready to dedicate years of your life to learning certain skills. At least for me, I'm sure there are people out there like, you know, if you have different proficiencies, like if you're already sort of like art minded to begin with, then you probably learn how to do these kinds of things a lot faster. But for me, it takes a long time. Yeah, so it's just constant practice over a period of a couple years, and that's it. There's no secret to it. This game looks kind of boring. Anyway. Okay, Immortality Elixir, Iron Gauntlet. Duplicate. So just making sure to create unique ability references for every card that gets them. Probably just good practice to make sure that I'm not sharing references between multiple items. Just clean all this stuff up as well. Okay. Almost done. And then we can move on to something more fun, hopefully. There is a bug with this unicorn horn, but I don't know if it's worth addressing at the moment. All right, let's just give that a quick test, make sure everything looks good still. So allied minion item cooldown is reduced by 0.3 seconds. Of course, I don't know what the default mimic should be. 55. Yeah, 55. So that's still working. Cool. And then candle is 4 seconds, which should be 3.7 by default. Yeah, 37. Okay. Cool. I think that works. Kind of feel like I should buff that. Anyway, let's take a look at these changes and just make sure I did everything correctly. Yeah, there's an extra space here. I don't want that. Okay. Cool. All right, we can call that one done then. Actually, there is this bug. So this bug says when combining honey with an item in the alchemy pot, that item doesn't get additional heal bonus from the draft of coagulation. I think that may be the same bug, but maybe not. Oh, wait, you know what? Maybe that's a different issue. So last night I was trying to fix this issue, and of course the way it goes is I was like, well, I could fix this issue by reworking all of these systems. And so I did that, and it turns out that all that work that I just did actually may not have actually fixed that issue, but that's okay because it did fix issues that I was having. So that's fine. But let's go ahead and let's add the honey here. I think what may be happening is the alchemization count may not be going up if honey is used because it's technically being preserved. So I wonder if that's, let's see. So this draft of coagulation heal goes up every time an item is alchemized. But the honey, oh. Well, whatever, it doesn't matter. Adjacent non-reagent items will not be changed by alchemy. So if I do this, yeah, this alchemization count doesn't go up. So the honey basically makes it a no-op. So I actually don't think that that's a bug. I don't think I want... So this item, when honey is next to it, is basically just bypassing the entire alchemy process. Which makes sense, right? Because honey is protecting it. So even though it goes through the alchemy process, it hasn't been alchemized, so the alchemization count doesn't go up. But if I don't use honey, and I do this, that should be fine. Yeah, so that went up to 2. So I actually think that's not a bug. I think that's the way that it should be working. So we're going to delete that. Sorry to whoever reported that bug, but your bug has been deemed invalid and is now in the trash. Hello, RN Genesis. Welcome. Good to see you. Can you tell us a bit about the debug console and how it works? Sure. So, I mean, the essential idea is that I have a bunch of centralized systems where I can add or fetch data. So I have these registries. The artifact registry is one such registry. What this does is this basically loads up all the custom resources associated with the artifacts, and then it maps their IDs to the resource file. And then I have stuff like Artifact Factory, which allow me to create an instance of an artifact from an artifact resource or from an ID. And so in the cheat helper, this is basically just, I mean, it's just an overlay here with like a text input. Basically all that happens is that when I submit input, so I am registering commands when this thing is created, and the command is basically just the string, whatever, and then there's a function that takes in the arguments and runs some code. So I have an add artifact command, which expects that the first argument is the name of an artifact. And then all it does is it just loads the artifact from the registry, does some safety checks just to make sure it's not going to crash, and then it adds the artifact to the artifact manager. And that's it. And it's the same concept repeated for everything else, right? So there's a card registry, there's a card factory, and so on and so forth. But the command is just a matter of parsing the string, add artifact sundial, and it just goes through the process. It's the same code that fundamentally drives adding an artifact to your inventory while you're playing the game. It's the same exact code path. It's just being invoked from somewhere else, right? And it's the same for adding items. So add item, skeleton warrior. It's the same exact pattern. And then I have various checks like, you know, add item, skeleton, Bob, item not found, skeleton Bob. So it's like, and then I can do list items that just lists out all the item IDs in the game. Again, that's just a matter of iterating over the registry and just printing all the IDs. So it's really simple. It's not anything complicated at all. I think doing something like that does rely on you having structured your systems in such a way that hooking into them is easy. But the cheat console itself is not hard. Did you get vertical? I don't know what that means. That bug report was me. I was 100% expecting it to work because nothing indicated that it wouldn't not. Well, the honey says that... What does the honey say again? Adjacent non-reagent items will not be changed by alchemy. Maybe this wording was not in place for the playtest, but I don't know. I guess to me that seems pretty clear. Like, nothing will happen to this item. Any adjacent items will not be changed, right? Hello, Mark. I'm creating a separate component nodes for the player, but the problem is that they end up acting like separate scripts, since my player script is already quite large. As far as I know, component nodes are supposed to be used for multiple objects. Is it okay for me to use them on a single object? I mean, this may be a case where composition is not the right approach. Like if you're creating components, but they're only ever used in one place for the player specifically, I would say that's not really a component approach, or you're not making your components generalized enough, right? So for Gunforged, I used the component approach very extensively, but all my components were very narrow. Like I had a health component, and the health component was only responsible for it was only responsible for, what am I trying to say? The health component was only responsible for tracking the health value and emitting signals whenever that value changed. But it was up to the entity, the root script of the entity, to determine what to do when the health value reaches 0, right? So the health component being completely generic and only being a number tracker was basically just saying, here's your narrow set of functionality. It's up to you to determine what to do when the health changes or when the health reaches 0, right? I think that's the proper way to approach composition. But if you're finding yourself writing a lot of very specific logic for just like the player, for example, then maybe composition is not the right approach there. It might be better just to have a giant player script. So yeah. That's cool. Thanks for the explanation. You're welcome. Now I kind of want the skeleton, Bob. My expectation had been from the artifact side. I toss in the pot and it is alchemized regardless if it changed. That is because sometimes I toss in an item and it just ends up with the same abilities it was tossed in with. Sometimes I toss an item in and it just ends up with the same abilities it was tossed in with. My expectation had been from the artifact side. Okay, well, I'm gonna leave it as is for now because a lot of stuff around alchemy has changed again. So I'll leave it for now. If it's still an issue, maybe we can figure out a solution for it. But I still think that it's pretty clear. Like it's saying outright that it will not be changed by alchemy. I guess there's, I mean, I could see the argument both ways that, well, the alchemization count should at least still go up. Like it should still be alchemized even if nothing changes. But I also understand the argument of like will not be changed by alchemy is just like a blanket, like nothing is going to happen to this thing, So yeah, I can see it both ways. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, well, let me know in the next playtest. Let me know if it's still an issue, if it still doesn't feel quite that intuitive, and we can come up with a fix for it. We can come up with a more, from the aspect of someone that hasn't played a lot. Right, gotcha. Yeah, they don't have to be used for multiple things, but then the enemy might have attack, health, movement, yeah. But you get to reuse the attack and movement components for both. The only difference is the player needs input and enemies need some sort of AI targeting component, yeah. My control logic alone takes up 400 lines. I want to add shooting. Should I still do that in a single script? Yeah, I mean, like, I think, the script length is not... Script length is one heuristic that you can use to determine if your script needs to be broken up. But it is possible to just have a script that's that complex. And I think, actually, like, player controller scripts are those kinds of scripts where you're frequently going to see multi-thousand line scripts because it actually ends up being easier to manage that than to try to split up all the player functionality across several scripts. Just because like the player controllers are usually just like so bespoke and like ungeneralizable that it doesn't really make sense to try to generalize it or to try to modularize it. It oftentimes makes sense just to, be as clear as you can with the code, like, still pull things out into methods and whatnot. But at the same time, it's like, if everything is serving just that one player entity, then keeping it one script is probably okay. If none of your other entities are going to have shooting, or at least they're not going to have shooting like the player has shooting, then yeah, I don't know if it makes sense to try to generalize that. You might as well just write that directly into the script and call it a day. And that was the case in Gunforge too. Like, I obviously used some components for my player in Gunforge. Like I did use the health component in Gunforge for my player, but the player root script was like a lot of bespoke like movement code and input handling and stuff. And like, it didn't really make sense to generalize it because enemies have different movement patterns. They're driven by AI. They don't have to deal with input or anything like that. So it's like, I think it's just one of those things where player controllers are like just going to be complex because of what they are. And the complexity and the length of the code, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to split it out. You know what I mean? I do think a number not changing makes sense for alchemy protection. My take about player component is mainly for multiplayer. I mean, that's exactly what composition is, though, breaking larger scripts into small modular and reusable parts, but yeah, if something is only for the player, no need to split it. But if your control script is also handling movement, well, now you need to rewrite the movement logic for anything else in your game. It needs to move. Find it hard to just look for something. Yeah, that can be a problem for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of those things where it's just naturally going to be complex, and splitting up the script is going to have its own challenges, but keeping it all together is also going to have its own challenges. I think there comes a certain point where you just like for me, my ability system, it's like I have this desire, like the ability system needs to be more elegant, more streamlined, more readable, more easy to work with. But at the end of the day, it's just like a fundamentally complex system, and like, you know, it's just going to have to be that way, you know. That means big scripts, lots of methods. Okay. All right, let's find something else to do. I kind of want to do a new item. All right, tell you what, I'm going to take a quick 3-minute break. And when I come back, we'll figure out what to do. But yeah, I'll be right back in just a second. Okay, I'm back. I think the cat wants to come here. Hi! Let's see, do you want to go on camera? Is that enough screen time for you? Okay. You're welcome, Mark. What's the bug with the unicorn again? So the unicorn horn, what does it do? Every time you do alchemy, it basically adds a totally random ability to the game, or to the output. The problem here is that it is possible for it to pick an item which ultimately does not have any alchemizable abilities. So a non-alchemizable ability is an ability that is like innate or corrupted. So if I have an item, the infusion altar, which has one innate ability on it. And the way that this unicorn horn selects a random ability is it first selects a random card. It creates an instance of that card, and then it gets one of the composed abilities that are alchemizable. But we're going to end up with a length of 0 in the case if we pick the infusion altar, which means that this unicorn horn will actually fail to add anything. Now I am handling that. It's going to fail silently, but it's still a bug because it should be adding a random ability in a guaranteed manner. It shouldn't just fail silently in rare cases, right? So that failsafe is there just to obviously prevent like runtime crashes and exceptions, but ideally this failure state should never be reached because there's plenty of abilities to choose from. And it may just be as simple as like running this in a loop until it finds an ability. I don't typically like doing that because it's choosing a random item every time, and so I don't know. I just don't like running loops that do random choices until you find one that works. It just feels very dirty to me. So I would rather come up with a solution where I can know ahead of time that I've picked a proper ability. And it could just be as simple as, just stepping forward in this list of IDs or stepping backwards in this list of IDs. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm not super interested in fixing that though right now because it's not a huge bug. I kind of want to work on the wasp. Because I have an idea for how I want to draw it. And I hope I don't make a fool of myself. But you guys will see the true raw Firebelly, the struggle or not struggle with pixel art. We will find out. It is going to be a 2x2 card. Wasp, create. Once you have your script split up into components, then it starts to make more sense. But at the start, it's overwhelming to decide what components to make and what they need to do. Yeah, that's true. It's hard to design components that only have one responsibility. Were you able to figure out if the electromite nest artifact I suggested would be feasible? No, I've not looked into that yet. Did I not write that down? I'll have to look back through the Alchemortis suggestions channel if that's where you posted it, or maybe you posted it in the stream chat. You don't want to wind up with 50 components for every entity in your game, so it's a balance, right? The cat, yeah. I used to do it that way all the time. I really grew to love the components. Basically, I need a new filter or something. I don't know if I need, because I don't have the information ahead of time about all the abilities on the cards. I have to choose a card first, instantiate it, and then I can pull the abilities out of that. Which you could argue is somewhat of a design flaw of the ability system. I think what I'd rather have is a system where all of the abilities get added to some kind of pool. I may be able to just do that. I may be able to just do that like as part of the card registry, or I could create an ability registry that instantiates all the cards. Startup pulls out all of their abilities and then stores those in a giant list or something, so I can look those up. I don't know. We'll have to see. But anyway, it's not important to fix right now. It's in Discord. Okay, cool. I don't remember what the tricky part about that one was exactly. But yeah, I definitely want to spend some time doing some more complicated abilities and artifacts soon, because I like to, I like to try to push the systems that I have and do stuff out of the box and try to force the system to grow a little bit, because that just, adds support for all kinds of other things. Okay. The stinger is going to need some work, but we'll just... we'll figure this out one step at a time. Maybe it's too curved, maybe. Anyway, let's just do this shape for now. We'll have like a little kind of like a little thorax piece, I guess, here. Okay, we're gonna need the head. Okay. Then we're gonna have legs. So we're just gonna get the very, very rough, basic shape down first. And I also need to fit wings onto this somehow. So we're just gonna do, like I said, we'll just do the basic shape first. I might want to do like a little... something like that. Maybe if I do this. So kind of got a shape going. Something like that. We need antennas. These should actually be coming out of the head, the front of the head, I believe. Might remove this leg here. These legs are kind of messing with me, so I'm gonna get rid of these for now. Yeah, I don't know about this wing. Let's redo this one. I feel like this needs to be going up more. Hmm. Oh my gosh, stop filling. Thank you. I still don't like these legs. I also don't know if I like... I think that looks better. Yeah. Just don't know what to do about the legs here, that's all. I don't know if it's worth... Is it worth trying to shade this right now? Maybe not. That color just seems too dark. I wonder if I should just do... Let me think. Maybe this should just all be red? No. Maybe most of it red? Well, we'll figure that out later, I suppose. I think it's getting there. I mean, we could see the vision. It's an artifact that generates a minion and charges. That minion then does stuff based on the artifact's charge count. Yeah, I think that should be doable. I don't remember. Yeah, I think it should be doable. So it gives you one minion. Is that the way that it worked? So it gives you one like Electromite minion or something. Hello, Drufus Games. Welcome. Good to see you. B-movie game. Oh, no. Yeah, that should be doable. I don't see why it wouldn't be doable. I guess there was some like gameplay considerations, like what happens if you sell the Electromite, but that could be built into the artifact as well. Like there could be a bonus that you get if you sell the Electromite, or if you sell it when it has a certain number of charges. Maybe that kind of like locks in a permanent bonus. Yeah, something like that can be definitely done, I think. I don't know, I don't remember what my problem with that was, but I'll go back into Discord and I will make sure to write that down on my board, because I do want to do something like that. I think that would be really cool. All right, now the hard part is the shading here. This one's going to be a little bit tricksy, I think, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. I actually don't like that. I think let's do this instead. I don't like how this one is. This shading is turning out. No. How do I want to shade this? I don't like that either. I'm just doodling right now, just trying to figure out what I want to do here. That doesn't look terrible. I don't think that looks terrible. Might play around with that a little bit more. I think maybe this needs to move out as well. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It looks a little bit weird. I'll have to play around with it some more. I think maybe... I don't know. I'm gonna have to play around with this. Shame on me for not knowing how to shade a, what is it? the thorax. I can't believe I don't know how to shade a thorax. Can you believe that? This looks weird too. I almost feel like this needs to like narrow more. Let's do something a little bit radical here. Okay, I'm gonna undo all that shading I just did. Okay, is that a better shape? I think that's a better shape. Okay, let's take a break from working on the thorax there and we'll try something else. Do the wings real quick. The wings are hard because they're supposed to be somewhat translucent, right? But I can't do translucency necessarily in this art, so I have to figure out a more creative way of doing it, I guess. Actually, those wings don't look terrible. I don't think that looks terrible. Do I want to put little... I don't know if I want to do this. Just darker parts in some spots. Okay. So I still need to do the legs and I still need to do the thorax shading, but love the palette you have. Is this what you consistently for everything in the game? Yes, yes. So the rule for this game, the sort of art, the art style, I don't know what the art rules, is that every single pixel that gets rendered to the screen has to be one of the 8 colors in my palette, which means that even during the runtime of the game, I can't use like transparency, and I can't do in-between colors. Like I can't modulate between one color and another. I can't set the modulate of any nodes in Godot because that's going to change the colors to be something that's not in the palette. So yeah, the rule of this game is that everything needs to be every single pixel on the screen needs to be one of the 8 colors. This guy calls himself the art director. Why is it a Thor axe when it's clearly a Thor hammer? That's a good one. If we think of the scale of items based on other items, the wasp is terrifying. Yeah. So this is gonna be, I called it wasp, but this is gonna be like a I'm gonna call it like a giant wasp or something, or like something like a corrupted wasp, something like that. You know what I mean? How in the world do wasps, like where do the legs go when they're flying? Let me look it up. And of course, Google wants me to fill out a CAPTCHA. I'm not going to do that. This one is more like kind of the wasp that I'm making. They just hang there menacingly, yeah. I think that's true. The problem is I almost need like a leg to come down here, but I don't want to obscure. I don't want to obscure like the torso. I mean, I think that's probably all right. I don't know, let's see. That seems to be fine. I'm not gonna do the whole like make it anatomically correct because there's not enough room in the art to do that, so I just won't do that. So it'll be a 4-legged wasp. All right, so we just have to worry about this thorax now. Trying to figure out if I want to put some white pixels in there. I think that works. And then I can do something like that. I mean, I think it's fine. It's not like, I don't think it's like super amazing, but what is this here? Let's see how it looks in game. A wasp is an insect, therefore has to have 6 legs. Yeah, I think that's about the only thing I learned in zoology in college. For an animal to be considered an insect, it has to have 6 legs, yeah. Hello, V, welcome. What are millipedes and centipedes? That is a good question. Oh, I forgot to change that. Arthropods. I think it looks decent in game. It's not terrible. What do you guys think? Acceptable or not acceptable? Oh, it's giant. Yeah, it's a giant wasp. I like it. Okay. I've got a yes vote from V. Anyone else have any opinions? If not, that's okay. Good. All right, 2 votes for good. All right. So I have to come up with an ability for this for sure, but I think we're looking good. I think it's looking good. Cool. All right, well, that will be it for the stream today. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark. So I'm going to add some abilities. Your game is all in one color. I'm not saying it's a bad choice, but have you gotten tired of that color palette? No, I haven't gotten tired of it, I don't think. I like how it looks. I've gotten better recently at using more of the colors. So previously the game used to be really dark. And I just started integrating more of the colors into more of the game to brighten it up a lot. And yeah, I feel like I'm still learning like how to use the palette effectively, which is fun. So yeah, I'm not tired of it. No, I think it's still presenting some fun challenges for me. Still learning a lot using it. So yeah, I'm not, and I just like the palette generally. I think it looks really cool. Maybe all of my games will use this palette. Maybe every single game I ever make in my entire life will use this palette. No, probably not, but no, I'm not tired of it. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Thank you for being here. Again, you can wishlist Alchemortis on Steam. The link is in the description below. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, follow on Twitch. I also have a Patreon and a Discord, so I'd love to have you guys there if you are so inclined. And I'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll continue work, and who knows, maybe there's a playtest coming up in the near future, but we will see. All right, thanks again, everyone, for your support. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye-bye.